Timakochi Chante Tanaguz Nalak Soida. Hi, I want to share some creation stories with you. At times like these, social distancing can give us an opportunity to reconnect to ourselves, to reconnect to our first stories, to be reminded that we all have the same first trauma. We all have a belly button. We were all born. We were all given opportunities to be heard, to speak to one another, to share things with one another. First narratives or creation stories or Indigenous, Native American, Indian, First Peoples oral traditions are timeless. First narratives have been here prior to internet, prior to social media, prior to television, prior to radios, prior to books, prior to prisons, prior to hospitals, prior to certain medications. The creation stories I want to share with you will hopefully inspire or at least allow you to reconnect to something truthful, something positive, something that can lift you up. This particular story is going to have some natural elements. This particular story is from a time where people connected to one another mentally, emotionally, physiologically. And we didn't talk about that connection. We didn't speak to it. We just knew it. We can feel it in our bodies. We just knew it. And the evidence was all around. The evidence was in the four-leggeds, in the wingeds, in the crawlers. The evidence was proven to us in the tree people. This story is a creation story of the Cedar people, the tree people. When you go outside in the Northwest, the cedars are always raising their hands up to us. They've been of service from the time they were birthed out of Mother Earth. They can remind us to be of service to ourselves and to each other. The story is going to have some truth about ambition, discipline, commitment, love, joy. The story might remind us of gatherings, of how we can be with one another, of how we can take care of ourselves. So long, long ago, among the tree beings, among the tree people, the cedars, they had ambitions. The cedars aspired to become of service. The cedars aspired to be many things for the people. The cedars were birthed out of Mother Earth for us, to help us breathe, to clothe us. They aspired to become many things. Some cedars aspired to be hats, cedar woven hats. Some cedars aspired to be clothes. Some cedars aspired to be canoes. Some cedars aspired to be longhouses, bowls, spoons, totem poles, carvings, to document our stories, to document our experiences. This one particular cedar, though, when she came out of Mother Earth, from the moment her little branches immersed out of Mother Earth, she knew she wanted to be a basket. She just knew it. You see, she was in the middle of all these big, beautiful cedar trees, and they wanted to be drums, and they wanted to be paddles, and they wanted to be canoes, and they wanted to be part of the longhouse, and they wanted to be woven to be clothes. But this one in particular wanted to be a basket. This one in particular wanted to be a basket that was at the potlatches, that gathered medicine, that held salmon. This particular cedar tree aspired to learn more songs, to hear more language, to travel. This cedar tree knew that there was even more people than she heard. The cedar tree paid attention to the salmon when they returned back home. You see, the salmon had their own creation stories. They had their own journey. And this cedar tree was so attuned and so apprised of all these amazing things in her home of trees. The cedar tree housed an eagle's nest and still wanted to be a basket. Finally, the day came that this young woman was singing her song. Oh, singing her song among the forest and touching all the beautiful trees. And the cedar tree that wanted to be a basket was calling her, please come to me, please come to me, please come to me. And sure enough, she did. She began to strip that cedar tree. And she prepared her cedar. And she prepared it just so. She let it dry. She began to soak it. Before she wove this particular cedar tree, she counseled with her aunties. She counseled with her grandmothers. She got permission to weave this amazing, beautiful basket. The cedar tree finally became a basket. As she was becoming a basket, this young woman took care of her just so. She oiled her up and she sang her song. She took care of her basket just so. She taught her basket many, many songs. This basket loved her person. This basket loved being at the potlatches. This young woman would bring her basket to the woods, and she would harvest her berries and harvest her roots and her medicines, bring it back to the longhouse and share her medicines with the people. This basket got to know so many voices. The basket's favorite moment was the potlatches. The basket was the best witness. Every night the young woman would sing her song, her weaving song, her cedar bough song to this basket. Every night the young woman took such good care of her basket. Every night the young woman would sing her song to her basket. As she thanked her basket for all the offerings, for taking such good care of her and the people, being reminded of the weaves in the basket, the medicine that she held, the salmon that she held, the looks on the faces of the people who got to witness the basket. And she put it away just so, every night. One night, after leaving the longhouse, The young woman set her basket down, and she went outside to prepare to put her basket away for the night. And it was taking a while, and the basket was wondering what's going on, what's happening. The basket began to smell things. The basket began to hear sounds of the people that the basket hasn't heard before. The basket was waiting for the young woman to come back. The smells were getting stronger and stronger, like burning of wood, burning of medicines. The sounds were becoming more and more loud. The basket hadn't heard such grief before. The basket hadn't smelled such things before. The basket heard different languages now. The basket heard different voices, different people. Pretty soon the basket was thrown. It wasn't being sung to. It wasn't being cared for. It wasn't being put away. The basket was being thrown into a pile of broken medicines. The basket wasn't sure if her person was there. The basket couldn't hear any of the songs. Pretty soon the basket was cold. And the basket would remember. The basket would remember the song. Hi-yo, hi-yo, hi-yi. The basket would remember the girl, the young woman that took such good care of her. And the basket was getting colder and colder, and the basket was seeing different people now. The basket was in a different kind of big box shape. Pretty soon the basket was being lifted up again, picked up, just so. It didn't feel as gentle as the young woman, but the basket felt good to be held. It felt good to be held again with these hands, whoever this person was. And so the basket began remembering the potlatch and the salmon and the medicines. But then the basket was put into a small box, almost like a glass box, like a different kind of small box. And there was no song. This person didn't sing anything. This person didn't even acknowledge the basket. It's almost like this person had no reverence for the intricate weaves of the basket, for the Cedar people. It's like the basket felt like it wasn't alive, and there was no acknowledgement. And so the basket was in this glass box. And every day, every night, the basket would try to remember that song and try to remember the way salmon felt and try to remember all the different clothing articles woven of her family, all the different paddles that were made of her family. The basket would recall potlatches. Until the basket started to get something on her like dust. The basket was struggling. The basket was having a hard time breathing. The more dust that came onto the basket, the harder it was for the basket to remember. The harder it was for the basket to sing its song. Pretty soon the basket forgot she was a basket. Pretty soon the basket was just something inside of a glass box. Cold. Dusty. Who knows how much time went by? Who knows how many beings or entities came around this dusty object inside of the box? Something happened. Something happened. Seeds must have been planted. Prayers must have been spoken. Something happened that one day, this thing inside of the glass box, this dusty object inside of the glass box, began to cough. This object inside of the glass box began to wake up. The glass box was being taken apart. And this young woman put her hands on this object and began to wipe this object back to its basket self, using her sacred breath, singing this special song. Hi-yo, hi-yi-yi. The basket was so awake. The basket remembered all the songs, all the spoken words, all the potlatches, the elders, the young children, its person, the young woman that wove her, the time it took. The basket was with its owner again, with the descendant of the young woman that wove her. The basket was a basket again. That's the story of the basket that wanted to be a basket. And I share that with you because I'm hoping to remind you to be in spirit. At times like these of social distancing, maybe not being able to go to work, maybe you're stuck inside more often. I'm hoping to remind you to remember your songs. Remember where you came from. If you don't know where you came from, you can find out. What feels true to you? What resonates with you? As a human family, we are emotional beings. There's a lot of emotions in that story. And I apologize if I offended anyone. My intentions are to lift you up, to remind you of our connection to the cedars, of our connection to each other, to the swimmers, to the crawlers, to the wingeds. If you rewind the story to the beginning, how the cedar tree knew she wanted to be a basket and just kind of stayed with that. And it came true. It came true because that was the intention. It came true because there's a difference between knowing and believing. And when you know that you're connected, then you are. When you know a creation story, then you can create too. I started with the fact that we all have a belly button. We all have a first trauma. We were all born. Because that's the beginning of our creation story. We all have a creation story. And hopefully this inspired you to look at your own story. Maybe share your own story.